Hey, um, I'm going to call this part two of the previous video I made on the Pacquiao Mayweather fight, post-fight analysis. That video had been made without me having had seen the fight itself. Well, I have seen the fight now. A friend sent me a video, and it was a video that was edited to take away everything except the fighting itself, except the fight itself. So, for example, it didn't include the ring walk, it didn't include the break between rounds, anything like that. Purely the time of the rounds added together. So, what I saw was just the pure fight. Now that's an interesting thing actually, because the whole issue about this has been what many would call lack of a fight. Um, I want to break this down a little bit from my perspective. Um, because now I've got the hindsight and the advantage of having seen it myself, so I can form my own perspective without just speculating, which I've done in the previous video. But basically, I do thoroughly understand the criticism. Um, the criticism is being leveled at Mayweather because he won the fight, and I think the frustration people feel is how he won it. Now, it's important to put this in context. This fight was billed as the fight of the century. One thing I'd like to say about that, and I didn't mention this in the previous video, but we have 85 years left in this century. So presumably fight of the century, if the insinuation is it's fight of the 21st century. Um, I'm a young guy. I suspect I'm going to live, as long as I keep my health, for quite a number of decades to come. I would be surprised if there is never another fight hyped up as much as this. Um, Although definitely the boxing world is asking itself a lot of questions right now. There have been other fights in history that were hyped up and didn't quite get they weren't quite the event they should have been. To give some examples off the top of my head, the first super fight arguably was between John L. Sullivan and James J. Corbett. Now, obviously, there's no footage of that. It's from 1892, but all the sort of analysis is there was a letdown. Um, Duran Leonard in their, I think it was the third meeting in 1989, that was said to be disappointing. And there was another bit, numerous other big fights that were not worth the hype that they were said to be. What I find interesting as a boxing fan is I have seen a number of fights with guys that are hardly household names, yet they're great bruising, brawling fights. And I think what most boxing fans appreciate is a fight that looks like a fight. Now, in boxing, if you don't follow the sport, I want to explain that there is a number of different styles that different fighters sort of use and advocate. Floyd Mayweather is a fighter who is incredibly defensive and very fast and very sort of, he has a very smooth way of gliding around the ring. I'm saying this to non-boxing fans. Now, to boxing fans, that is something of a controversial sort of position to have. What he sort of does is he doesn't throw many power shots. He's a master technician with defense, but he'll as soon as the guy tries to open up on him by sort of throwing a flurry of punches, Mayweather will hold, and then he'll sort of skip to the side and he'll dance around. It almost looks like dancing. And for a super fight, that is a very controversial thing. It should be pointed out now, Mayweather is not the first fighter to do this. Sugar Ray Leonard was accused by the Hagler camp of doing the same thing. I think Hagler's exact words were, um, come here, you little bitch. So Floyd Mayweather isn't the first fighter to be accused of this, although I think it's fair to say Sugar Ray Leonard was more popular in his day. Ali even done it to some extent, although Ali was also involved in a lot more head-to-head wars. But a lot of great fighters have done it, so to sort of suggest that it's just Floyd Mayweather is a little bit unfair. I think the thing about this fight is the sheer mind-boggling levels of revenue involved and the pay that the fighters got. Now, I think that might explain a lot of the frustration that fans feel. Well, there's two things. Firstly, the pay-per-view and the fight tickets themselves were not cheap. Um, So people genuinely feel a grievance that they've wasted money, or that their dollars or their pesos or their pounds or whatever it is they spent went to a fight that was not ultimately that exciting. Now, based on what I've watched, the first 6 rounds were actually quite good. I wouldn't say they were that boring. I think there were a few moments, especially towards the end of round three, where there was quite a bit of fireworks. But the fight as a whole, it is not a particularly memorable fight in truth. Certainly not to be a super fight. I've seen a lot of guys fighting who are a lot less known than Pacquiao and Mayweather, who produce real battles in the ring, and in many cases they wouldn't get a great deal of attention. Also, it's noteworthy that the Ring Magazine Fight of the Year are often feature guys that are not that famous. I believe the Fight of the Year last year was Lucas Mafisi. Apologies, I've never quite known how to pronounce his name. Versus John Molina. Now I've heard of Mafisi, but John Molina? First time I've heard of that guy. Yet he was featured in a Fight of the Year. I haven't seen it, but presumably if a magazine as prestigious as Ring is going to say that, then it must have been a good battle. And there have also been there's been a lot of great fights that didn't come from what was billed as a super fight. They were billed as big fight, but not as a super fight. So definitely there is a plausible argument to be made. To Ring's credit, they did give a big feature on this. That they were being quite responsible, and they weren't hyping it up to sort of say this will definitely be a super fight. I mean, in terms of how the fight panned out, but they were sort of saying that there has been previous fights that were hyped up. I've got the magazine beside me right now, but they have in this month's edition they have a list of. But you know what? It's worth taking. Bear with me for 10 seconds. Still there? Okay, thanks, people. Thanks for waiting. I should really have prepared this, but it's the early hours of the morning and a little bit tired. So, this is an interesting feature from this month's Rain magazine. This is the cover, if you haven't seen it. It's on, of course, referring to the May-Pac fight. Um, and I'm just looking at the feature they have on Boom and Bust, referring to super fights. Here we go. Boom and Bust. This is the feature that's, of course, Ali Frazier won. Boom. Ali Frazier won. Now, I'm not going to read out all of these word for word, but it says, for most baby boomers, this is where mega fights begin and end. The larger-than-life Ali had returned to boxing after a 3-year absence, and despite being stripped of the heavyweight title for refusing the military draft, was still undefeated, and considered by many to be the rightful heavyweight champion. Frazier, also undefeated, had earned championship recognition during Ali's exile. The build-up was so intense that it seemed the entire world was watching. After 15 rounds, Frazier was still champion, but Ali, battered but unemployed, was becoming a legend. So that was. I haven't actually seen that fight as much as the Rumble in the Jungle or the Thriller in Manila, but that definitely lived up to its hype. March 71. Then we have Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, 1980. Ray Leonard versus Thomas Hearns, 1981. Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney, 1982. Although that was quite an ugly affair because of the racial overtones that was around that one. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Thomas Hearns, 1985. The interesting thing there is if you look at that, 4 out of those 5 fights were from the 80s. So the 80s is generally seen as a good time for super fights. Bust. Jack Dempsey, George Carpentier, 1921. Joe Louis, Billy Conn 2, 1946. Mike Tyson, Michael Spinks, 1988. Evander Holyfield, Buster Douglas, 1990. Evander Holyfield, Tyson 2, 1997. They're the fights they put under bust. And I reckon they'll probably put this one under bust. Um, the last super fight that was sort of seen as a super fight that I could think of was Mayweather Alvarez, 2013. Um, um, I watched that, and I think it was probably a better fight than Mayweather Pacquiao. But a thing that is consistent with Mayweather fights is that he never really changes his style that much. So no opponent can truly say that they were surprised. Or I'm not saying Pacquiao is saying this, but refer more to the fans. Um, I think that Lennox Lewis actually posted a link on his Facebook page showing the Hagler Hearns battle in 1985, and I don't even know if that was billed as a super fight, but the opening round of that fight was a war, and it's now nicknamed the War because it was such an intense display of man-to-man combat, straight on, head on, incredible stuff if you ever see it. So Lennox Lewis posted that and said he thought that this is what fans were expecting. Lennox Lewis came out on his page in favor of Mayweather and congratulating him and basically saying that the criticism is stupid. Max Kellerman, the boxing pundit, he has attracted a lot of criticism for his pushy style of interviewing after the fight to Pacquiao. I know a lot of people are very angry with Kellerman because he came across as quite patronising, rude, and too pushy. Basically, what had happened was Pacquiao said he thought he had won. Kellerman sounded a bit sort of patronising. You really thought you had won, and people thought it was too soon after defeat. There's a few things I want to say about the sort of approach that Pacquiao fans are taking to this, and I include myself in that because I was Team Pacquiao. I wanted Pacquiao to win, and I do sense that, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed because Pacquiao to me is a man who transcends boxing, and he really was an iconic figure. Is to millions of people. So people, you could sense the feeling that people wanted him to win. Bit like Ali and Foreman in '74, there was that palpable sense everyone wanted Ali to win, and of course he did win. So there's a few things I want to just point out here. Firstly, the financial aspect, bearing in mind that Mayweather got something like, we're talking truly staggering numbers here. I think I read somewhere 1.8 million a minute is what Mayweather was getting in this fight. I've seen different figures for how much his payday was, but whatever source you look at, whatever source, it is at least 80 million. Pacquiao got a very hefty amount as well, but Pacquiao went in there. He went in as a fighter. Mayweather went in as well. This is the thing, people say Mayweather's a card. Now, I think it's valid to criticize his technique, but I don't agree with the tag card. I don't like that. I never have. The reason I reject that term is because whatever way you look at it, Mayweather knew he was going in against a hostile crowd and against a very, very, very skilled opponent, a record-breaking opponent. Um, say what you want, but it takes courage to do that. Not when you're going into a ring when there's a hostile crowd. To have tens of thousands of people booing you, you need to have tough skin. So I don't I don't have much time for people saying he's a card, and there's been all sorts of memes online showing him as a chicken and all sorts of stuff. I find, as a long-time boxing fan, it's one aspect of the sport I really don't like, and I never have liked it, is that so many people cannot make the point without being childish about it, without sort of, and I'm being quite candid here with fellow Pacquiao fans, and you might not like what I have to say here, but I want to be blunt about it. I understand the criticism here because Mayweather's tactics are infuriating if you want to see a proper brawling fight. And watching it, I did feel frustrated as well. I could see, the criticism is valid because he was holding and he was running in the sense of, constantly running away from head-to-head battle. In a super fight, I think most people want a head-to-head battle. They want something like the Thriller in Manila, which was a complete war. And I guess it's sort of partly it's to do with the massive money involved. Like sort of these guys need to earn their money. Um, what I would say about that is remember boxers risk life every second of a fight. And the thing is when you're looking at guys on the level of Mayweather and Pacquiao, they make it look easy, but it's anything but easy. Um, anyway, that's all I'll say regarding the sort of memes and so that are going around. Although I understand the criticism of Mayweather. and I do understand the animosity towards him because of his arrogance, because of his lifestyle and so on. I just don't think it's valid to call any man who enters a ring a coward. It's just it's an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you want to say, "Oh, I don't like Mayweather's style," and it's he let down the fans or something like that, then I totally agree. I endorse that 100%. I do think Mayweather should have brought much more of a battle to it because what it looks like is he just won easily, and it's not taking away anything from Pac-Man. But the point is, it's I guess the sort of notion is that at the end, what's interesting is Mayweather tried to reach out to the fans, almost like he finally recognised that some humility was necessary. He praised his opponent, and he sort of said the Filipino fans should keep supporting Pac-Man, but there was still loud cheers with that. Carl Froch commented on this, and he said that he didn't particularly like that the jeering. That is, it was a very partisan crowd. There's no question about that. And personally, I prefer a situation with 50-50. Although Mayweather is partly to blame for this, he hasn't exactly helped his own image over the years. And I do believe that to be pound for pound best fighter in the world, you do have to be a role model. You do have to set a much better example than what Mayweather has set. I don't particularly like the guy, but nor do I like some of the garbage that is now going all around the internet. To any Filipinos who are watching this, I have a huge amount of respect for Pacquiao. I think he's a truly inspirational figure, but you don't win this argument by sort of like posting memes showing Floyd as a chicken. I know it's light-hearted, but I don't think that brings anything to the sport either. I think you can criticize Floyd without getting down to the sort of gutter. I think there's other ways to criticize him. The point is, he did make a shitload of money, and I think it's fair to say that many people would say it's not deserved. After the fight, Oscar De La Hoya actually apologized to the fans for that. And Oscar De La Hoya is a man I have a lot of respect for. I respect his opinions. So I can definitely understand the controversy. In no way can that be considered a great fight in itself. Um, One thing that Froch said, and I would echo this, and Pacquiao fans won't like me saying this, but for a man that is well known for being so humble and generally very respectful, Pacquiao was. I think he was playing a bit to the crowd at the end when he said, "I definitely think I won that." Now, I think in his heart and mind, Pacquiao knows he didn't win the fight. And that's the first thing we as Pacquiao fans have to just accept. He didn't win the fight. And I'm aware there's some circulating around that the scorecard sort of showed, well, Pacquiao was the red corner, Mayweather was the blue corner, and apparently there was discrepancy in the scorecards. But looking at it and trying to be as objective as possible, Mayweather didn't actually do anything wrong insofar as skill is concerned. I mean, the thing about boxing is it is defend yourself at all times as well. People forget that. It's not just about getting beaten up and being very brave, it's also about defending yourself. And no one can take away the fact that Mayweather is a master technician when it comes to defensive boxing. Although the other side of the criticism is equally valid that um, he is not, he doesn't bring to the fights battles. And I do think that for a super fight, you need a battle. So I'm not criticizing the criticism of that. I totally understand it. But what I'm criticizing here is the approach that some Pacquiao fans are taking, which is just, I don't know, I don't think it brings anything to the sport by posting memes showing Mayweather as a chicken. He's not a chicken. I mean, I don't like his style, and it is definitely a style that can be open for criticism, but he's not the first guy to do it. Um, as for the future of the sport, I think it's going to be, well, first of all, a rematch. I see it very unlikely that it's going to happen. Pacquiao was saying something about an injured shoulder, and he also got a little bit of criticism from some quarters because usually Pacquiao is quite humble and gregarious, and in this it's a side to Pacquiao I haven't seen before, which was he thought he'd won the fight. He didn't give Floyd any credit. Usually it's the other way around. Um, in any other fight, people would have said that Pacquiao was being a sore loser. And I hate to say that as a Pacquiao fan, but let's be honest about it. If this had been any other fight, people would have said, "Oh, he's a sore loser." But boxing is a very brutal business, and it's you get fights like this where a large number of people are unhappy, and I do understand it because they spent a lot of money on this, and it wasn't the battle that they wanted to see. Um, so I do understand that side completely. And Mayweather can be very frustrating in terms of his fighting style. But I don't think people can say that he's a coward, and I don't think people can say that he's a bad fighter. Mayweather knows how to win fights, and the point about boxing, the fundamental number one goal of being a boxer is the goal to win. And Mayweather knows how to do that. So it's like the means justify the ends. That's sort of the argument for Mayweather's approach, I guess. But from a fan's perspective, it is boring. Freud also said that. What else can I say? So the future of the sport, I think it's going to be very difficult for promoters to be able to justify to paying fans any other big fight on this level. The next biggest thing is probably Cotto Alvarez that fell through recently. I don't know if they can get that together again. Golovkin, Cotto. Um, but to be honest, I don't. I think it's going to be. There is no one else in the sport today apart from Mayweather and Pacquiao that could have brought something together that big. Maybe in a few years, someone like Canelo could maybe get it together enough, and there could be someone who has sort of scale too. So I'm not saying it's the end of super fights, but promoters would need to think very carefully about what happens. But in the end of the day, it is down to the fighters themselves. Now Pacquiao done nothing wrong. He went in there. He brought the fight to Mayweather, and Mayweather done what he always does. So I wouldn't criticize Pacquiao in any way. Pacquiao was trying to make the fight exciting. He was trying his best. Um, Mayweather done what he always done. But what do people expect? This is Mayweather's style. Um, if someone else had been pound for pound king, then we would have seen probably something like the Thriller in Manila. Um, so it's a pity that this transpired the way that it did. In itself, I don't think it was a terrible fight. I mean, the first 6 rounds were pretty good. The last six, not so much. Went the distance. I've seen worse fights, but I've definitely seen much better for a fight on this sort of scale. And I think that's what really bugs people. The fact that it was so expensive. And another thing, promoters are also going to need to seriously look at the financial aspect of the sport because it does seem that business has become coming before the fans. And that's something that I think is, I mean, the pay-per-views were not cheap. So that means that only the better off fans can afford to either go to the fight or watch the fight. For a lot of poorer fans, they don't have access to it, and that's not fair if they're supporting the fighters and they don't have access to the fight. There needs to be a situation whereby if this sport is going to really survive in a credible way, then it needs to find a way to reach out to much more people. Um, and like so many sports, it's all about the money, and I don't like that. Um, I don't think there's going to be a fight like this hyped as much as this for at least, if I was to put a figure on it, maybe 20, 25 years from now. I'll be a middle-aged man by then. Um, so yeah, all in all, it is a pity. Who's to blame? Well, the thing is, you could blame Mayweather, but then he hasn't used a different style. He hasn't done anything other than what he's done in other fights. So he's been consistent. And why would he change his technique when he knows it wins? As for corruption, I know some people are insinuating that. Time will tell. Maybe there will be some questions to be asked, especially about the scorecards. But I have to play the devil's advocate and accept the judge's decision. And corruption does happen in boxing, but I don't think we can honestly say that Pacquiao really done enough to win this. Hand on heart, I don't think people can really say that because to win decisively, it's Pacquiao should have been able to really control Mayweather's techniques much more than he did. He tried his best, but it wasn't enough, and he admitted that himself. Um, to non-boxing fans, I guess you would be looking in bemusement at this. It's like, are we back in gladiator times? Because there is a brutal and ugly side to boxing, and there is a bloodlust, unquestionably, among fans. There is a lot of aspects to it. I can see people being put off the sport, but it is what it is. And what you need to understand is the excitement around a big fight on this scale is an incredible thing. It's a phenomenon in itself. And then if the fight is as good as the hype, then it is an event. Now, what we had here was a huge amount of hype and a fight that was mediocre at best. Um, it really wasn't a fight that lived up to its expectations. If there was a rematch, then Mayweather, if he took that, and I doubt he would, but if there was a rematch, it would need to be something that really was a revolutionary moment that turned around the situation the sport is in. I don't think boxing is dying, but I do think it's going through a challenging time. And this was supposed to be the fight that really saved it, and it didn't do that. Because I know a lot of people that are not remotely interested in boxing were asking me about this, and like telling me, "Am I watching the fight? What's happening?" It seemed like most of the world was talking about this. Even the BBC, on its main news source, as opposed to just sports news, was covering the fight. So the hype is unquestionable. It was a record breaker. It was the most expensive fight ever. So it is in the history books, whatever way you look at it. But I think boxing does need to learn some things from this. Firstly, the financial aspect, because I think you can have a great fight without such big money being involved. And unfortunately, it is all about business now. And, it's not necessarily a new thing, but it has been going up and up and up. Probably since the 70s onwards, it's been about big money. But that's true of football, and it's true of other sports as well. Um, what can I say? Mayweather just knows how to win fights, and he is a great fighter. There's no question about that. And any serious. The thing is, I will say this thing. Although I'm a Pacquiao fan, I do strongly believe that all fans, a lot of fans, get somewhat blinded by the partisan views. I mean, Pacquiao fans are going to say he won just because they're Pacquiao fans. That people need to be honest about this and just accept the facts. Um, you get that sort of partisanism in boxing, and it's very, very audible. I imagine if Alvarez and Cotto fight, there would be the whole Mexico Puerto Rico thing. Now, the thing is about that is, I think that's fine as long as it's 50-50. I always feel uneasy with watching a fight where the crowd is so one-sided because it sort of makes me think there's a guy going in to basically be fight, fighting against a mob as opposed to another man. And maybe I'm too sensitive on that score, but yeah, there is a lot of questions about this one. If you have watched this whole video, I do thank you because I've been rambling now for half an hour. But it's disappointing, and I think it does damage the sport. This fight didn't pan out the way people wanted it to. Two final thoughts. Mayweather's style is irritating, but we knew what sort of fighter he was, so we can't say we were really surprised. He won the fight, and I think we have to just accept that fact. Um, and Pacquiao should also accept it. If there is any credible reason why there should be a rematch, then I think that event wouldn't be hyped up as much because promoters know full well that people wouldn't buy it. But then, if a rematch turned out to be a great fight, let's say you have a rematch where there's not as much hype, but it's a great fight, so that could be a great thing. And I hope Pacquiao would win that one. Um, both guys are still in their 30s. I don't think it's absolutely foregone conclusion that Mayweather will retire after September and after facing someone like Khan or Bradley or anyone other than Pacquiao. But if he does retire, then he will go down in history. Both guys have records. Mayweather's undefeated, and Pacquiao is the only man to have won different titles in 8 different divisions. So they're both history makers. There's no question about that. Um, Someone had said when different styles clash, you get a great fight. Well, that theory is proved not accurate. A few final thoughts. Yeah, to Pacquiao fans, look, I get it. I understand your frustration because I feel frustrated as well. But I don't respect, you're talking about humility and you're talking about Pacquiao being a good role model and so on. But then are you following Pacquiao's example? Are you being humble? Are you being gregarious? Not so much. Not when you call Mayweather a chicken and a card and this sort of thing. I mean, he's super rich and he's arrogant, but he wins fights. What can we say? That's what he does. And I don't think you could say that this fight was stolen or it was, the judges were biased or something. I think he just won the fight. We have to just accept that. It's just that people are pissed off with the way he won it, hugging and running, and that's definitely I can understand that, but we just have to accept the facts. I think this would have been a better fight had Mayweather been a different style of fighter, but you know what you get with Mayweather, and that's what happened. Okay, I'm just going to repeat myself now, but final thoughts. It's going to be a long time before boxing sees something like this. And I think the only way that they can make it really credible without people saying, "Oh, remember in 2015 when Pacquiao Mayweather let down everyone, when Mayweather Pacquiao let down everyone," they would need to find two guys who have a proven style that would create a battle. Now, there's no fault with Pacquiao here. This is a guy who brings excitement to fights. He's an explosive fighter. Has a style that is a lot more boring. I think if you had a situation where there was someone who was ranked as highly as Pacquiao and could bring to the table the sort of explosive style that Pacquiao has, then you would have a super fight worth really the hype. From my own experience, when I fought, I've reviewed my video a few times, and obviously there's no comparison here because it's amateur boxing in the world. But just I'm trying to kind of get some empathy, not that but I took more of a Pacquiao style. I kind of went in and tried to, it was. But I need to review that myself. If I ever go further in the sport, one of my subscribers asked about that. I need to really review my style as well. Because I was overwhelmed. The other guy I was fighting was too fast and he overwhelmed me. If I need to pick up from my mistakes and develop, I think I can. But yeah, I think I'll still be fascinated by boxing, and I don't think this is not the end of boxing. Let's just get that clear. Not the end of boxing, but it is a disappointment, and it definitely brings a lot of things into question. Definitely, the money aspect has to be challenged because I know there's the business side of it, and I know business is that's how business works. But you know this is going to end up like business comes before the fans, and I think a lot of people in the sport realize that. Some final words. Congratulations, Floyd Mayweather. Manny Pacquiao, he'll recover. He's a tough man. You know, he'll go far. But it was disappointing. This was not the fight it was supposed to be. It really wasn't. If a rematch happens, it has to be different. But I doubt a rematch is going to happen because Mayweather's got nothing to gain, and there's no way he would change his style. So I can't see anything different happening in the rematch unless Mayweather changes his style. And why would he do that? He would only do it to maybe get more respect from fans. But I don't know. I think Mayweather's so controversial with fans. Even, you know, I'm tempted to be cynical about this. I never like to see a huge amount of bias in a crowd, but that's the way it goes. That's boxing. Thanks for watching.